to Talking Supply Chain. In each episode, top supply chain industry professionals and the nation's top thought leaders join host Brian Strait and share their unique insights to help supply chain managers stay one step ahead of their competition. This is Talking Supply Chain. Welcome to another episode of Talking Supply Chain. I'm your host, Brian Strait. Artificial intelligence is changing everything in business today, but not always in the same way. In most parts of enterprise, AI thrives on structure, well-defined data sets, predictable workflows, clear objectives. But in the world of third-party risk management, structure is exactly what's missing from the equation. This isn't the usual AI success story. Today, we're going to be talking about how fragmented, the unevenly developed world of third-party risk management is becoming the ultimate stress test for AI and supply chains. Joining me to do that today is Dave Rusher, Chief Customer Officer at Aravo, a provider of third-party risk and compliance management solutions. Dave has spent years helping companies navigate the complex relationships that underpin modern supply chains, and he's seen firsthand what happens when risk, regulation, and AI collide. Dave, welcome to the Talking Supply Chain.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Brian. I appreciate you having us on. It's certainly, the concepts associated with AI and third-party risk management are both topical and near and dear to my heart. Just by way of background, I'm a technologist. Aravo as a company is a technology company that builds software to support organizations with their supplier management and third-party risk management programs. So I'm a technologist first, but over the past 14 or 15 years now, I've been working with our customers to help them identify the processes necessary to identify and manage the risk posed to their organizations through their supply chain and their third-party ecosystems. And so certainly the emergence of and rapid evolution of AI over the past several years now is becoming an increasingly important topic for all of us. So it's great to
Yeah,
be on.
great to have you. And I'm so glad to talk this topic. I don't think we've talked at all about AI in the last year or so. So I think it's a good opportunity to kind of discuss AI and risk management, obviously.
Excellent.
Can before we get into some of the more specific questions I have, can you kind of put in context where we kind of are with third-party risk management today? We've spent years, companies have spent years investing in this, and it's evolved over time. But I think many industries and companies within those industries, it's very different and looks very different within each company and industry. Can you kind of talk about from that perspective why we don't have like the standardization on risk management across industries?
Yeah, it's it's a good question, and it's a tough question really to answer, honestly. I mean, it's something that I work hard on with our clients day in, day out, is to really figure out how to operate your programs effectively. But
Mhm.
third-party risk management and as an extension, supplier management it's an industry that's been around for quite a long time. Third-party risk management really kind of originated out of some regulation that was surfaced back in 2011 or so in financial services in terms of the attention and due diligence that needed to be done with their outsourcing relationships. But it's cross industry these days. Everybody has relationships with suppliers. Every company in the world is dependent on third parties of some capacity to execute their business strategies and plans. But differently than other areas of the market or other industries, other, CRM, human resource management, in terms of other areas, TPRM and SRM have been increasingly non-standard. I chalk that up to being a lot of different regulations that apply to different industries. There's a set of them in financial services. There's a set of them in pharmaceutical. There's a set of them in manufacturing or oil and gas or whatever the industries are. And those regulations don't necessarily align with one another. So what a pharma may do is different than what a bank may need to do. So there's that element to it. But there's also the very nature of risk management that is so company specific. Each organization, while they may have the same set of risks that apply to their business, the way that they measure, monitor, or characterize that risk to their business is different. And the controls that they might implement as an organization will correspond to how they treat that specific risk or what the priority of that risk is to their business. So across the board, across industries and across even sizes of companies, the concepts associated with implementing standardized third-party risk management programs has still been a little bit elusive. Certainly, it's matured along the way, but boy, there's still, a fair degree of differentiation across every company and even across industries.
Yeah. So if we don't have that standardization, right, and every company is different, every company's unique, et cetera. It's got to be difficult enough to put in a risk management program, right? That like it's got to be kind of unique to every business, right? But how does that apply when you try to add AI on top of it? If you haven't gotten to that point where there is standards across the board there, and AI wants that structured data, right? I mean that's how AI kind of works best in many ways because it can come up with the same solutions, right?
Yeah, I think it's again, what we're seeing, I think, is that what companies are trying to achieve, the ultimate objectives they're trying to achieve with their risk management, third-party risk management, is they're consistent. They want to reduce the
Mhm.
overall risk but still accelerating their needs to bring their products and services to market through this ecosystem of third parties or by purchasing stuff from suppliers. So their objectives at a high level are the same. And so where we see AI being applied to achieving those kind of common objectives, but getting there along different paths, is by applying that technology to really aggregate all the various different unstructured content, unstructured knowledge, unstructured information and data that exist in the world about those third parties and give these organizations the opportunity to really kind of codify that whole bulk of external data and unstructured data in many cases and point that towards these common objectives. Historically, they made it try to script that gathering of data along a survey or along an assessment or a questionnaire or something like that, which was a really highly structured way of getting that information, which turns out to be different across companies. It tends to be unwieldy. As a supplier, they don't love doing those things. And so the ability for what we're seeing in the world is this aggregation of unstructured content, documents, policies, insurance policies, information security policies, information security certificates, audit certificates, things that these companies do have rigorous processes around producing, but they're still in an unstructured capacity. AI is really being beneficial in terms of kind of aggregating all that unstructured content and again pointing it in a much more efficient and effective fashion towards the identification of risk and resolution. So it really is, I don't know that the standards in terms of the risk management will be consistent, but the gathering and codifying reams of information is becoming much more achievable with much lower effort and frustration.
Mhm. So even though it's dealing with data that may not be structured, it's providing a benefit and it's actually speeding the process, I guess, right, of getting that data into a structured format
Yeah,
in some
absolutely.
way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what companies, and if you're looking, if you're a cybersecurity analyst that's charged with investigating the risk posed to their business for that third party, you've got common concerns that you know about, you know, that are technical in nature. And so, you can open up, their audit certificates or their information security policies, procedures. You can take a look at those as a human and kind of, once you're experienced enough, you can identify what those issues are.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with your own company's risk appetite and control framework to figure out, well, what is it that we need to do here? What's the action we need to take? But that's a lot of effort and it requires a lot of experience on humans just to aggregate and translate the information. And these people, they have jobs to do, which is actually correcting the risk. And so when you plug AI into it, it's like the people can train those AI models to look for those common things. And they train
Yeah.
them once and they point it at all that unstructured content that's coming through. And it ultimately makes those, cybersecurity analysts in that case, or, insurance policy triage personnel inside of your organizations better and faster at making the risk decisions that they need to make to get on about doing their jobs, right? AI is not going to fix all that risk. It's not going to eliminate all that risk that exists, but it's enabling, experienced humans with a much better handle on where it exists and what to do about it. How serious is it? How urgent is it? What's the impact associated with it?
Yeah.
In much better and faster ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, AI is used in a lot of areas in business today and being implemented. Financial service, I think, is one that's really adopted AI quite a lot. Um, my understanding that risk management, it's not been as quick of an uptick in the risk management space. So, can you kind of talk about that and why it may be a little slower than some other areas of business that we're seeing?
Yeah, I think, when we look at the audience of, stakeholders that run risk management programs or third-party risk management programs, they're by nature, they're conservative with respect to their, adopting new technology. They're conservative with respect to depending on technology to solve their issues. So it's a conservative lot of folks when you're in legal or compliance or IT security by very nature. You've got some hesitance before you just adopt a technology just because it seems like it can and yield some benefits. So number
Yeah.
one, you got a conservative audience of people charged with managing these programs. Number two, I mean, there's not an insignificant amount of concern associated with, your internal intellectual property, competitive differentiation, that make up your company, making their way or leaking their way out into, the public domain through AI. And so you've got organizations that are being very cautious about how they, take on AI as a part of these programs they have, both the conservative nature they have and the very real concern about their own intellectual property competitive differentiation, making it out into the
Yeah.
open domain. Those are really things that I think are keeping people, at least today, from moving forward at scale with AI solutions, especially generative or even agentic solutions that are based on, external technology platforms. So they're looking at them, and they're taking the right steps. But again, I think what we're seeing right now are people looking very deeply at the tech. They're being very judicious about how they use it. They're being very conservative in the due diligence that they conduct, in preparation. Now, this stuff will happen. It's going to happen. It's going to mature, and people are going to figure it out. They're going to get comfortable with it. But right now, it's very
So,
investigatory and a lot of due diligence happening
so,
around
so
the
the
use.
company lawyers aren't quite ready to go into court and say, well, the AI said to do it this way.
Exactly right. Yeah, it's that old adage, about you can't outsource risk. Yeah, it applies here, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't just point to the AI and say, my AI bot, my agentic AI bot did this. It was their decision. So yeah, exactly. You got folks that, they want to use it. They're excited about the benefits that it can yield, but there are some both, ethical as well as technical questions about it still
Yeah.
today.
I've been waiting for the first public company in their earnings to announce that they missed earnings because of AI. Because and I'm still waiting for that to happen. And I guess in the legal perspective, you don't want that to be the reason why you're making an
No.
argument in court. So
No, you don't want to be the person that made the decision to deploy that specific AI model or that
yeah.
specific, agent for sure. So
So
yeah,
as we as companies implement AI, oftentimes it's done for several reasons. Efficiency, obviously, automating workflows and maybe tasks that are just not value-added tasks. Cutting costs, obviously, is another reason, making quicker decisions. But in the world of risk management, third-party risk management, some of those things don't really apply, right? I mean, it's one thing to cut costs, but if it puts you at greater risk, it may not be the best decision you make. So can you kind of talk about what the real goal of risk management is and how AI fits into that actual goal?
yeah, I mean, a lot of automation, a lot of the results of the KPIs you mentioned, cost reduction, efficiency gains, those apply in AI as well.
Hmm.
But to the point that you asked about, they don't necessarily, that's not the end game. And that's a benefit along the way. What people are looking for in the incorporation of AI and third-party risk is how do I enable my humans that are charged with managing that risk? How do I enable them to make better decisions? How can AI help identify the risk that exists here, because your suppliers and your third parties aren't necessarily going to tell you right out front. You got to suss that out. AI
Mhm.
can help with that. And then it can, based on all of the interactions that you've had across your supply chain, across your ecosystem, it can start to then determine how risky or how much risk exists to your business in those factors, and then make recommendations, suggestions, um, and prompts associated with what actions to take. So risk management is a complex process within these organizations. We talked about the driving factors. They're non-standard. They're highly, you know, personal to each company and each department within a company. And so anything that we can leverage AI to do to help us as humans aggregate all this valuable information and identify the concern areas, help us categorize the degree of that concern, and then implement action plans with those items that need the most immediate attention. That's really the complexity associated with AI. It's not just about making a more efficient process or doing something faster. This is about complex assessment of data and making decisions, which really that's the goal. That's the step phase of evolution in tech with AI. And so we're starting to see how those use cases emerge.
So let's take that last thought and maybe go up one level with it. As the companies think about automation, whether it's AI or whatever ever the tools in their decision-making process when it comes to risk management strategies, right? Risk compliance, reputational concerns obviously weigh on the executive's mind. So has the do the decisions to include automation and like AI, does that change the way that the company thinks about the risk and compliance component of this? I mean, do they think about it differently when they say, hey, we're going to put in technology, so maybe this risk, maybe it's not as much of a concern as we thought it was, or does the consideration for the risk and compliance component of this stay the same regardless?
No, I think it's evolving. I do think it's evolving. I mean, executives and organizations, there's this particular type of use case I look at as it's kind of research oriented. It's like, what risks should we be looking at? And historically, you would have, gotten a team of people, they would have consulted some advisors, and they would have gathered up, well, here are the things that we need to include in our risk register. And then you build your program around that kind of thing. So research-oriented AI, and AI processes are very much being used today to help companies identify kind of the best practices, the common emerging trends, how they should be thinking about their risk management programs, including roles and responsibilities for people that they need to put into their organization that they may not have had historically. I mean, financial services have been um, they're very mature in their risk management programs. Whereas I look at other parts of the market, if you're a pharmaceutical organization, some parts of your business are very mature in risk management. But third-party risk management in pharmaceutical companies is not as mature. So when they look at things, they can use AI to help them identify what's my program need to look like, who are the people that I need to hire in, what are the roles and skills that I need to be looking for. Then, you can further that by doing kind of assessment, oriented use of AI, which is, well, now that I know what my program needs to be structured, like, how do I go about executing it? What should assessments look like? What should my common risk register look like? What are, kind of the common themes that we're seeing in terms of, um, risk that needs to be managed, whether it's cyber, whether it's, anti-bribery, anti-corruption, data privacy. These are the three big kind of risk areas in third-party risk that continue to drive investment and continue to drive programs in companies. But each one of those things are complex. So getting assessment-oriented use cases from an executive standpoint and using that to help you structure the organization and your program, those are two really important use cases that I do think are up on the executive and internal stakeholder agenda moving forward.
Yeah. Want to ask you about agentic AI. We kind of joked a little bit, only half jokingly, right, that the lawyer wasn't quite ready to say the AI did this. The AI
Yeah.
made this decision.
Yeah.
But agentic AI is being rolled out in a lot of organizations in different areas. Procurement is one where it's making decisions on its own, right? And negotiations, for instance, between suppliers and things. So that is one of the benefits of it, right? I mean, it cuts out some of that manual process you don't need. You've already talked about the fact that humans still need to evaluate some of these risks and the third-party risks. Do you see agentic AI getting a bigger role in that? Can we reach a point where agentic AI is able to make some of those decisions on the risk for third-party management?
So I think, are we seeing it in discussions and in kind of thought experiments for sure,
Mhm.
right? Um, am I seeing agentic AI when we, especially things like having multi-party agentic agents, or the agents themselves doing the negotiations or the discussions between themselves? I personally haven't seen that quite yet in third-party risk.
Yeah.
I think there are some areas in procurement where those things are nearer on the horizon than they may have been, um, than they may be in traditional third-party risk.
Okay.
So, for instance, if you look at kind of the traditional reverse auctions that might happen in certain parts of the market, it's certainly commoditized procurement events. It's conceivable to me where agentic AI could be designed to navigate that type of a transactional conversation for sure.
Mhm.
Look at here's my set of criteria for my event. Here's what it takes to participate. Here's the volumes. Here's the quantity. Here's the requirements. And having agentic, processing between agents happen. I could see that. I could see it being a controlled scenario, having boundaries drawn around it in which you might be comfortable with it. So again, in certain parts of the market around procurement and supplier management, I could see that. When I think about kind of what goes into the navigation of a relationship with a third party, especially complex contractual negotiations, I think that's a little farther out on the horizon, right? Because
Yeah.
those tend to still require a healthy amount of human experience and honestly gut checking in some cases, about how to implement a contract or how to implement a clause within a contract, or how to conceive of um, you know, a monitoring action, a remediation step, or corrective action. Those things they haven't been standardized enough in my mind yet to where there's even a consistent enough amount of experienced transactions for an AI to even leverage. So
Yeah.
while they could be implemented, I think you'd want to watch it, monitor it, train it, and see kind of what's happening over the course of it, before you'd be comfortable turning the reins over completely to automating end to end. But I
Yeah.
do think that there are some, like I said, there's some great use cases. Assess the cybersecurity, you know, um, the cybersecurity profile for this particular third party, and recommend to me whether give me a green light, move forward or don't move forward. Those are pretty obvious ones,
Yeah.
based on the financial risk presented, the financial viability presented by a certain supplier or third party. There's standard enough information available out there in the world that can be aggregated, looked at, and really streamline kind of decisions through your process, which you're going to make. They can automate a lot of that relationship, but I think ultimately the culmination of making go decisions are still a little ways out there.
Yeah. You talked. I want to move to a few questions on kind of the practical application of AI for businesses here, but I think this builds off of what you kind of just said. Is that there are some use cases, the cyber risk perhaps, where some of this goes. But companies, when they implement stuff, I don't know how patient companies necessarily are in implementing a technology like AI, and they say, "Hey, we're going to implement it in this area or that area," or do they say, "Hey, we're just going to implement AI across the board?" Right. So I want to ask you about some of the risks that the companies may face if they just implement an AI solution and expect it to work uniformly across all the different risk areas, the different suppliers, et cetera. What can go wrong with that kind of approach?
Yeah, I haven't. First of all, in my from my purview, and it could be the size of organizations that we tend to work with, maybe contributing to what I'm about to say, but I don't I don't see kind of a global or holistic application of AI
Okay.
across these risk domains, as an example, or across these practices. and part of the challenge here is that, within organizations, there isn't even a holistic third-party risk management program approach being applied across them. It's still a very siloed practice within organizations. Your cyber team tends to operate fairly autonomously from your data privacy, from your anti-bribery, anti-corruption, or your compliance and finance. So these teams amongst themselves operate fairly autonomously. So as we're looking at our experience with our customers, they're deploying their AI solutions departmentally as well. They may be thinking globally about what models do we want to use? What's the best provider?
Mhm.
Is it what is this? Are we gonna lock in on Gemini? Are we gonna lock in on ChatGPT? Are we gonna lock in on Claude? Whatever they are, right? This isn't a commercial for any of them, but you tend to see companies making broad decisions about the tech they're going to use, but departmental decisions about the application of that technology to solve their specific urgent needs. So,
Yeah.
and I think that will continue, in my opinion, in
So
third-party risk for a while.
I think one of the things that I've read and I've heard from a lot of people is that they implement AI and they don't get the ROI on it because in many cases they're not targeting it to the right use cases or
Right.
it's a broad approach. But it sounds like what you're saying is that that's not necessarily the problem in the risk management space.
No, I don't. Well, I don't think that the ROI concerns are the problem yet. That
Yeah.
may be to come. I think just general adoption is still something that is working its way into third-party risk. I see, like I said, while financial services are one of the more mature with respect to their third-party risk management practices, they are also some of the most justifiably so paranoid about the implementation of AI in
Yeah.
terms of what it would subject them to, right? So they're thinking big about what to do with it, but they're rolling slow on actually doing anything with it.
So
So I
that
see
that
some other industries, tech industries as an example, high tech and that, they're moving much faster.
yeah.
They're not as much regulatorily controlled in that regard, and so they're more technologically savvy, so they're moving forward with a little more pace there.
Yeah. So the conservative nature of the space basically driving people to identify the specific use case as they roll out an AI
Yeah.
program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I look at it too, it's like with the practical applications. That's why I kind of started with research-oriented use cases. It's like, give me all this data, help me understand what's going on, help me to make decisions, but don't make them for me.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of the step, right? People are scared about relying on AI to actually make the decisions for them, but using it to consume, aggregate, make suggestions and guidance, those are great use cases. I see a lot of my experience with our clients, they're doing a lot with their own AI solutions internally as internal coaches, internal mentors. So the use of agentic AI and chatbots embedded within their various different departmental technologies, that's super beneficial. Thinking about how it can help their teams ramp up more quickly, get better and easier access to information throughout their massive companies.
Yeah.
Just trying to navigate, the information or the knowledge that's been built up over years. AI use cases around, aggregating that, making use of it as an internal chatbot, coach, mentor. Those are fantastic, and those are real world. That stuff's happening today.
Yeah. So it's given the nature of the risk management space and the people that work in it, I think one of the concerns, you kind of alluded to this earlier in the conversation about implementing an AI system is, what happens, right? I mean, do you add an AI and then create a new area of risk that you didn't mean to do, right? So how can companies think about that perspective when they're discussing adding an AI solution or technology that they can ensure that by adding it, they're not solving this problem and then creating another risk over here that they weren't aware that they were opening up the door to.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if you're going to as you introduce AI, it's not if, but as you introduce AI into your company's ecosystem of solutions, it is additional risk, no
Mhm.
question about it. Right. And so One thing that we have been seeing in third-party risk over the last couple of years are companies investigating their third parties and their suppliers' use of AI. Right? So it's one thing for us as a company ourselves to say, okay, well, we're gonna introduce AI. We're okaying the use of AI. We're establishing use policies within our company on who can use it, how can it be used, what content can be published. That's for our internal ops. But as in third-party risk, it's equally, if not more important, for us to understand how are our third parties making use of AI. This is happening today as well. And so that investigation in my due diligence process of identifying who amongst my suppliers are using AI, what are you using it for? What of my data do you have access or are you subjecting to your use of AI? That is an additional vein of risk that that at least our customers and the companies I work with, that's where they are right now, is looking at that, identifying that degree of risk. And so third-party risk management programs are including that due diligence in their risk management programs. They weren't doing that 2 years ago. They didn't have a responsible use of AI area in their assessments. Now they do. And so now they're asking their third parties, their suppliers, their partners, are you doing this? How are you doing this? What tech are you using? How much of my data are you subjecting to it? And then looking at that internally and making decisions about what contractual changes do we need to make? What relationships do we need to transition off of because we're not comfortable with what that company is doing with our data. So that's happening today. A side effect, of the emergence of AI is that exact risk that you're mentioning here. Companies needing to understand, get their head around, and make some business decisions about how that affects the relationships they have with their suppliers and third parties. We're seeing that ourselves. But
Yeah.
as a provider of third-party risk management programs, our customers are asking for our help um, in helping them investigate that risk, identify that risk through their ecosystem. And as a provider ourselves, we're being asked by our customers, what are we doing with respect to AI in our technology, in our processes, or with our people that impacts the services that we're providing to them. So those are all really big topics in third-party risk management today. Not just how it's, can make the programs more efficient, but what risks exist, how do companies identify those risks, and what should they be doing about it?
Yeah.
That's hugely, it drives a lot of effort on our part right now.
Want to get in two more quick questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One kind of looking forward, but let me ask this one first, and that is simply, we've talked about this already. All departments have their own little siloed approaches and whatnot. I mean, the procurement team has its approach, compliance has its, supply chain logistics people have their own as well. How does as they all look at their individual third-party risk, how does AI change the relationship between those different departments? I know you mentioned that each department probably be introducing its own AI solution, right, to manage the
Yeah.
risk in some way. But does it change the relationship between those departments as because a company that sells a good, it requires all those departments working together ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it can, one important thing about this, right, is, in order for you to have a good holistic third-party risk management program, all the parties need to be talking with one another
Mhm.
and collaborating with one another. And that sounds easy, but that's very challenging. And it's challenging for lots of reasons that, humans are humans. They get along in some capacities and they don't get along in some capacities. They have ulterior motives and departmental objectives that don't always align. Where I can, and by the way, people change jobs and they change roles in companies quite often. You have people that build up a skill set in a thing, they may leave that company or they may move to a different department. And any collaboration or any, stuff they had going on that muscle that they built over the years, that can go away. the use of agentic AI and agent-to-agent processing can help, from a resilience standpoint, protect a company against organization change of any kind, right? So people come, people go, people move from company to company, they move from department to department, they retire. AI stays, right? And so I can see it where it's a resilience plan in the future for organizations to keep the agents themselves as kind of the arbiter of history and consistency in their organizations, and plug, humans and experts into the outputs, and the decision points, that they need to make along those process boundaries, um, without having to ensure that there's been context and that people know what they're doing. The AI agents will continue to get better and more intelligent and more experienced about what it is that they're doing to help facilitate organization change over time.
Yeah. Well, let's hope as they become more intelligent and understand what they're doing, they don't suddenly come back and ask for a raise, right?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of challenges that emerge with AI, and I'm on kind of the backside of my career at this point, so I'm hopeful that the smarter folks coming along behind me will be able to answer those questions a little better.
I just want to ask you one final question, kind of a forward-looking question, and your advice, basically, to organizations. I think so many you want to try to be proactive in your risk management programs, but I think a lot of companies are reactive in their programs. So, what advice can you give companies that want to move from maybe that more reactive approach to risk management to a more forward-looking, proactive approach buoyed by AI?
I think this applies to AI specifically, the question that you're asking, but it's a best practice in my opinion for third party programs, kind of in general. And number one is that third party risk management programs, they're not your typical IT project that you implement, you get your requirements, you implement, and then you just maintain. Third party risk management is not like that. Third party risk management is an ongoing strategy for an organization. It's not a tech project that has a beginning and end. It's a strategy that continues. And so as you think about the implementation of AI, it's thinking about it as an ongoing participant in that journey. The AI strategy tool, model, technique you use today will not necessarily be the same one that you use a year from now, or think about in the same way. So as you look at it, it's that incorporating, AI as a participant longer term. And it's not the specific tech or model, any of that. It's the whole process of AI, thinking about it as a supporting vein of your third-party risk management program will be important. And then, throwing or leveraging the power, the speed, kind of the automation available in AI to do forward-looking modeling and what if scenarioing. That I think is going to be a future state reality that's been really hard, for companies to achieve historically in third-party risk. The what ifing and modeling, that's tough. I
Yeah,
do think that's a future state where when you have the right type of AI, you have the right, experts in your company managing it, you can leverage the what if scenarioing options much better, than what we've been able to see from a technical implementation perspective,
yeah.
moving forward.
Great. I think that's a great point to end on, Dave. Thank you so much for your time. It was fascinating conversation listening to you and talk about this and so much more to this whole third party risk management than I ever thought.
Absolutely. It's been a
And
pleasure.
so great. For people who want to maybe explore their own risk management programs, best way maybe to get in touch with Aravo and for your
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, you can learn a little bit about Aravo and our products at aravo.com. And on that, you've got a microsite that's the intelligence first risk platform. That's what we do. That's what we sell in the market to automate third-party risk management programs. Under that intelligence first platform, you can see about, the four waves of AI evolution, that we're seeing within, AI within third-party risk management. So it's our opinion about it. But we've been doing this a long time. I've been with the company for 15 years, and we've been working with large organizations, for 25 years now. So, it's just an informed, position that you can get some perspective on. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
aravo.com is the place that you could learn more about third-party risk from our perspective.
And how the world has changed in 25 years, I imagine,
Yeah,
for you
exactly.
guys.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
thank you so much for joining me today, and sharing your thoughts on this third-party risk management and AI, and how organizations may be navigating this going forward. So I appreciate the time.
Anytime, Brian.
Thank you. We are out of time. I want to thank my guest today, Dave Rusher from Aravo, and all of you who took time to listen to us today. We greatly appreciate it. New episodes of Talking Supply Chain come on Thursdays. You can find them on scmr.com or wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, this is Brian Strait, and you've been listening to Talking Supply Chain. Talking Supply Chain is produced by Supply Chain Management Review and Peerless Media. You can find it on scmr.com, supplychain247.com, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. For more information on this topic or to sign up for our weekly newsletter, a print or a digital subscription to our publication, visit scmr.com. We hope you will join us for our next episode. For Supply Chain Management Review, I'm Brian Strait, and thank you for listening.